Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky has addressed the US Senate, where he made a desperate plea for more military assistance and shared his wish for NATO to impose a no-fly zone over his nation. Joining us now is Peter Matthews, Professor of Political Science at Cypress College in Los Angeles. And that's one thing that won't happen, isn't it, Professor, that they won't put in the no-fly zone?
No, they will not, because of the danger of escalation to a war with Russia by NATO and the US, and a shooting war with airplanes, of course. And who knows if that could escalate into a nuclear confrontation. So this is a horrendous and terrible tragedy that could have been avoided and should have been avoided, this whole invasion of Ukraine. And Russia needs to pull back and work and settle on a diplomatic solution. And Ukraine needs to also agree to, terms that would make Russia a bit more secure. Like, for example, earlier before this started, many people recommended that Ukraine should be a neutral country, not joining NATO, but the West should guarantee her security, and Russia would guarantee she would not invade Ukraine. So those things, that could have happened a few weeks ago, didn't happen, and this is what we have now today. You know, it's terrible, Tim. 1.2 million refugees fleeing the country, 331 people killed, civilians killed already. It's horrendous, it's tremendous, it's terrible, it's going to be getting even worse. And there are nuclear power plants, as you know, one of them got hit and it probably caught fire, I think it did. And that's a very dangerous situation. Those power plants can be made to explode and become like a nuclear weapon if they do explode. There are 15 power plants in Ukraine, and this is a terrible time to be in a war around those power plants.
History tells us that it's almost impossible to deal with a psychopath or despot, whichever way you want to describe Vladimir Putin at all. If it wasn't so serious, it would seem like a comedy act, him addressing a bunch of flight attendants and telling them about how sanctions are war. He is a massive problem.
He's a massive problem because he's unpredictable. That's the problem. When you're in a crisis like this, you need predictability and leaders who are predictable. And if he feels himself backed up to the wall, there's no telling what action he might take. And to say that sanctions are an act of war, if he feels that, then he's feeling like he's at a war with the West. And that means physical battles that he's fighting the Ukrainians. It's not good. And cyber attacks and counter cyber attacks could knock out power grids around the world, could bring hospitals to a stop, transportation systems. We are in a terrible, critical situation. And of course, Ukraine is bearing the brunt of it. But the whole world is at a very critical crisis situation right now. It has to be settled with some form of diplomatic negotiation and a pullback on both sides. And we need to work on that. I think the leaders have a real duty to the world, the people of the world, to save us from this tragedy. The worst war since World War II already started here.
Absolutely. But if you look at it from a Russian perspective, he is leading his country into a very dark hole. It's going to be very interesting to see what happens. Of course, the US and others have brought down sanctions on Russia, but also on the oligarchs. And there's a lot more being written about what pressure will happen to Vladimir Putin internally. And if we ever look at those that are thrown out, people like him, it generally happens from within.
Absolutely, because the people of Russia are suffering themselves right now. The ruble has lost a huge amount of its value. The prices and inflation have skyrocketed in Russia. There's a shortage of goods, and the banks have been put under sanction. It's in a horrible condition, Russia itself, and many people are protesting, as you could see. And that, of course, destabilizes the regime to some extent. And the more destabilized he becomes threatened with, that kind of destabilization, who knows how desperate he might get. And that's the other tragedy, is having a balance that the West should use in order to negotiate this and bring it down to, once again, to a more stable situation. And not just the West, but Russia has to be serious about this negotiation as well. And it has to be, it's very dangerous, right, what we're in right now.
Peter, thank you so much. Just very, very quickly, what did you think of the State of the Union?
Well, it certainly helped President Biden boost his numbers. He went up from 39% to 47% approval rating. He's still underwater a bit, but of course it helped because he came out with sort of clear ideas and also talked about unity and unifying the country. But also Americans are very concerned that this war could end up in nuclear. 70% of Americans are afraid a nuclear exchange could occur. 80% are concerned about other things that could occur unintentionally with this war. And everyone's concerned, but they're trying to rally around the president to some extent. He did get a bit of a boost in his ratings, though.
All right. Thank you, Peter. We'll catch up with you real soon.
My pleasure, Tim. Take care. Thank you.